So welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us for today's presentation in creating inclusive, welcoming economies and communities through worker cooperative businesses. We're very excited to have you with us today. My name's Anthony Salas. I am the events director with Welcoming America, currently based in Chicago. And before we do get started with the content, just a few quick housekeeping items for you. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sharing it out by the end of the week, likely. So give us just a little time to get that ready for you, and we'll send that out via email. And if we have anyone that is using an AI bot to record this, those will be removed just for privacy purposes, but also we are providing the recording, so we will cover that for you. In terms of communication, if you would use the chat box where you're entering your name and location, use that if you can, ideally for technical questions. So if you have any issues with the Zoom platform you need help with, let's enter it there. If you have content questions as the presentation is going on, we do invite you to use the Q&A feature and enter your questions there as they come up. And then we are going to address hopefully as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. And so getting into why we are here today, we are thrilled to have Anh-Thu Nguyen, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships with Democracy at Work Institute, joining us for this presentation today. We spent a lot of time with her kind of getting this ready over the last month or so, and we're excited to finally be on the day for this presentation. And so with that, Anh-Thu, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Anthony, for the introduction, for sharing space today, so that we can just share out the work that we're doing at Democracy at Work Institute, and hopefully at least learn a little about all the amazing work that membership is doing with Welcoming America. Again, thanks for joining today. My name is Anh-Thu Nguyen. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at Democracy at Work Institute, and I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, although right now I am in Dallas, where my family is. I know there's some folks from Dallas here, so wonderful to see. So a little bit about Democracy at Work Institute and who we are. We are a national organization that was originally the research and training arm of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, which is the trade association of worker cooperative businesses across the United States. We spun out as our own 501c3 in 2013 in order to meet an emergent need that we were seeing in the field, which was that worker cooperatives and worker ownership as a tool to bring in the most excluded workers and excluded and marginalized entrepreneurs in our economy. And so our focus is about using the tool of worker ownership in order to build community wealth, in order to build more inclusive economies, and make sure that worker cooperative business development is done in a scalable way, strategically, and to meet the needs of the most marginalized in our economy. Next slide, please. So before we get into the why worker cooperatives, just as like to level set, I'm going to do a quick primer of what a worker cooperative business is, because you might hear the term cooperative and it encompasses so many different things. It's essentially a member-based business. So you have housing cooperatives, which are basically a cooperative where people, the owners of the housing, are the members of that building. Or you have for example, a food cooperative, which is a type of a consumer cooperative, which means it's a business that serves the interests of the membership, and the members who own it are the consumers of that food cooperative. I'm going to talk specifically about worker cooperatives. In this case, a worker cooperative business is a business that's owned and governed by the workers that consists of its membership. And it's characterized by three major things. One is investment. The worker owners invest in the business. It's called a capital contribution. there is a decision-making process that is democratically based, premised on the idea of one worker, one vote. And that can look like, a direct democracy for smaller businesses, and it can look at scale in very big businesses, like a representative democracy, kind of like what you see with governments. And then finally, the structure of the business. It can be in certain states where there are cooperative corporation laws. It can be structured as a cooperative corporation. In many cases, and especially with more recent worker cooperative businesses that center the needs of excluded workers, they can be LLC cooperatives. And we'll go a little bit more detail about that later. Next slide, please. So just as a kind of like a listicle of what worker cooperative business are, it is first and foremost a for-profit business. It is not a nonprofit. It is owned by its workers. That consists of the membership class, and it's democratically controlled. So like I said earlier, the idea is one person, one vote, which can look like a couple of things, right? It can look like for a small business, everyone has the direct decision making on all things, or in bigger businesses, you elect the board, the members elect the board, which then delegates tasks to management. So management does exist in a lot of worker cooperative businesses where there are 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000 worker owners. And that's something that like we need to remember as well when folks are like, well, maybe this is not possible because it's, it's too complicated. It's actually, there is management, and a business can be structured as a worker cooperative and still be quite large. Important part of the profits in a worker cooperative business is that is divided between the workers. They vote on it, or it's reinvested into the business. And so that's a key part. And it also like creates like equity and buy-in for the worker owners themselves. Like everybody gets to benefit, and everybody gets to make a decision as to whether they want the profits to go back into the business or to enjoy them themselves. Now, there isn't 100% financial equality in a worker cooperative business. So you can have salaries varying by role, by the amount of time worked, and the amount of time you've been in the business as a worker owner. All of these things are variables. Not everybody gets paid the same necessarily. The form also varies. So there are some states, I think 19, that have cooperative corporations. So those are C corps, they're called. But you also have things like an employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP with democratic bylaws. You also have things like an employee ownership trust. Those tend to be more popular with bigger businesses. And then also with most small businesses, especially small businesses owned by immigrant entrepreneurs and immigrant worker owners, it tends to be a member managed LLC with cooperative bylaws and an operating agreement that specifies the kind of democratic management practices in place and governance. Next slide, please. Also, as a note, if I'm going too fast, please let me know in the chat, and I'll slow down. So yes. So next. Oh yes. So who makes up the demographics? Who becomes a worker owner? A lot of times they're entrepreneurs of necessity and of mission. So becoming a worker owner of a worker cooperative business tends to be a pretty low barrier to entry because of the idea that the burden of management and of investment is shared amongst the owners themselves, the worker owners themselves. So we see a lot of people who become worker owners and start worker cooperative businesses who are starting their own business for the very first time. They might have been employees, they might have been freelancing solopreneurs, and they are basically sharing and combining resources, and so that they can be more effective and be more stable as a business. We also see people who have historically been locked out of the job market. That might look like all number of things. You have people who have been out of the workforce for years because they might have been caregivers, or they're returning citizens coming out of prison. You also oftentimes, and what we really center are immigrants specifically, people who are locked out of the job market, whether it's for language, whether it's because they're newcomers and they don't know how to navigate systems in order to get employment well, being mixed status, undocumented, many different reasons why people are interested in worker co-ops as a way to generate income. You also see contractors and contingent workers, gig workers, people who are doing DoorDash, people who are cleaning houses, people who are working in historic agency type models in industries, whether it's childcare, whether it's home care. Also looking at the worker cooperative model as a container that allows them the protections that they otherwise would not have as gig workers, and also access to benefits as well, whether it be sick time off or having benefits. So that's where the worker cooperative model can be very helpful. And then in addition, the entrepreneurs of mission, in addition to these entrepreneurs of necessity, you have retiring business owners who don't have, they're doing succession planning. They don't have family members who might want to take it over. They might not want to sell to a competitor. And so a lot of times they think their only option is to close their business. But sometimes they think, oh, when they know that worker ownership is an opportunity, and then they can sell to their employees and they have the financing to do that, they'll take that on because they want to take care of the business that they created and the employees that they have been working with who have added value to their business for its duration. And then finally, when people associate worker cooperative businesses historically, social entrepreneurs, people who are building values-based businesses that center community, not just profit, not just extracting from where the area, but really trying to be rooted in community and sharing resources and being additive. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Oh, can we go back? Worker co-op. Thank you. So just a little bit about worker co-op impact by the numbers. DAWI is we're called a field building organization, and we're nationally for worker ownership, and we also nationally hold the data for worker ownership as well. So we do a lot of surveys. We do a census, an enterprise census, and state of the sector survey. One of the surveys that we did, and this is a little bit old. This is from I think 2017, although we're doing one again this year, is focused on job quality for individuals, for worker owners and cooperative businesses. And what we found was very interesting. So first, people of color make up 57% of worker owners, and those identifying as female make up about 63%. There is a lot of worker cooperative businesses flourishing since then in spaces like home care, which is predominantly women of color, predominantly immigrant women, and predominantly a very low wage and exploitative workforce. So using worker ownership as a way to transform the industry is something that is in play, and there's proof is in the pudding. The largest worker cooperative business in the United States is Cooperative Home Care Associates, with about 2,000 workers. Almost all of them women of color, immigrant women of color in the South Bronx. And to this day, it sets industry standards with regards to job quality, with regards to certifications and their portability, and with regards to wages and in turnover. Actually, like much lower turnover than what we see in the country and what we see nationally. In addition, we found that worker-owned cooperatives are 2/3 more likely to succeed than the average U.S. company, because assumption of risk, it's delegated as opposed to just assumed by one person, so it facilitates a bit more stability. We also see worker cooperatives having higher productivity levels than traditional businesses due to the buy-in of who's working and profit sharing and wages premised on that as well. In terms of job satisfaction, happier workplaces, or more content in the work that folks are doing. A lower pay ratio. I think right now, like the pay ratio in the average American company is something like 200-to-1. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty high. It's in the 3 digits. Worker cooperative businesses tend to have a much lower pay ratio, like 2 to 3-to-1 pay ratio wise, between the lowest paid worker and the highest paid worker owner. And then employee turnover, importantly, tends to be much lower in worker cooperative businesses than in traditional businesses, which is important because when you lose people, when you lose workers, you have to do retraining. It's costly, and there's also a loss in productivity as well. Next slide, please. So worker ownership as a community wealth building strategy is something that DAWI has been pursuing for the last decade since our inception, in partnership with municipalities, with community-based organizations, with worker-centered approaches across the country. And we really focus on two major things using worker ownership as a tool for community wealth building. One is around legacy business preservation. So what does that mean? Because of retirement of baby boomers, which is basically the largest shift in wealth like in history, we're seeing all these owners from that generation retiring, business owners who don't necessarily have a clear buyer for what are operational, stable, viable businesses. We know that business closures impact everyone negatively, both the owners who have their retirement tied up in their business, workers, governments via property taxes and occupancy rates, which are lower if a business closes, and then also the costs of unemployment, retraining, workforce development. So what we've been doing for the last decade through our Workers to Owners Collaborative, which is it's a national convening and collaborative membership collaborative of technical assistance providers doing conversions work. We've been focusing on converting businesses, traditional businesses, to worker ownership, especially those with workforces that are primarily BIPOC and immigrant. This is a way of building wealth, creating ownership, and also rooting businesses more permanently in the community through worker ownership. In New York City, where I work, we launched in partnership with the mayor's office, the deputy mayor's office in 2021 in the midst of COVID, the owner to owners hotline. So that was launched. We had a campaign for a 6-month period. It's still operational, but we had a really 6-month hard rollout where we were able to reach 28,000 business owners that resulted in 150 consultancies and ultimately about 30 or so businesses in the pipeline for conversion, 31 businesses in the pipeline for conversion to worker ownership. And it just shows how hungry business owners are to know about opportunities with succession planning. That's not just sell it to a competitor or pass it on to a family member if you can, or close your business. There's another option, and one that's really additive to the community and additive to the state, to the city, and to the area where the business is. Another prong of our approach, in addition to legacy businesses and worker cooperative conversions, is centering around immigrant entrepreneurship using the worker cooperative business model. And we extend it extends also to any and all excluded workers, but we really are centering immigrant entrepreneurship here. We know that newcomers and immigrants are a vital source of small business creation in the United States. And part of our worker cooperative development involved innovating on the LLC model using LLC cooperative forms so that anyone really can start a business, regardless of status, regardless of the situation that you're in. You can be an entrepreneur. It's a lower barrier to entry than you might expect for business ownership. By setting up an LLC cooperative business, and it does allow for collective ownership. It does allow for collective governance through bylaws, through the member managed LLC model. And in doing so, we're bringing people into the economy. We're bringing people who have been in the shadows to actively contribute to local economic development and to the tax base. So it's like a win-win for everybody, for the entrepreneurs who are now building sustainable businesses, businesses and for the cities and municipalities that they're in that are getting tax dollars and, getting economic developments, a flourishing economic development. Next slide, please. So at Dawi, for much of our work since 2017 has been focused on creating a more streamlined way for worker cooperative business development, centering excluded workers, centering immigrant communities. We saw, and the LLC cooperative model has been quite popular with community-based organizations across the country as a way to get people to build businesses and bring in income. But we also saw that there was a lot of disparity between how businesses were created and developed and how long they would take, as well as the sustainability. So we sought to create a more streamlined way to do so, and doing it in partnership with community-based organizations, with municipal governments like San Francisco and Boston, in order to enable replication and scale, and to do so in a way that was ultimately sustainable. So since 2017, we've been able to develop worker cooperative businesses in a whole variety of sectors. Namely, we launched in New York City originally in partnership with CUNY, and in San Francisco in partnership with Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs, two professional services worker cooperatives with students and with young professionals, with dreamers, who had deep experience and as interpreters, as translators, as graphic designers, and had been freelancing, but hadn't started a worker cooperative business before, and also really hadn't engaged in entrepreneurship, since many of them were pretty recent graduates. So from that, we iterated on the model both in New York City and in San Francisco, originally focusing on professional services, but we iterated it to do much deeper work with community-based organizations, specifically worker centers, to develop rapid response cooperative businesses, or LLC cooperative businesses using the rapid response cooperative model. In various industries such as home care, taxi driving, childcare, promotores, garment manufacturing, mobile car washes, really focusing on these areas that are lower wage, where there's a lot more historic exploitation, but using the worker co-op model to lift standards, to create high wage and high road work, and to develop entrepreneurship in these communities. So today, as a result, we are seeing through our work, our worker cooperative businesses using the rapid response cooperative model in communities as including much and a lot in California, in San Francisco, San Diego, the Central Coast, LA, and then also we're seeing in the cooperatives form with our partner organizations in Boston, New York City, Chicago, and other parts of the country where we're starting this work. Next slide, please. So I wanted to speak a little bit, because I know there are a lot of folks with cities and working with cities in the room, about our municipal and statewide partnerships with local governments, because we think a really key part of the work that we do and the ability to replicate and scale worker ownership is public-private partnerships. So not just with community-based organizations, but also with governments in order to reach scale and sustainability. So we have been involved with the New York City Worker Cooperative Business Development Initiative since its very beginning. It started in 2014, fiscal year 15 in New York City, funded through City Council, and it continues through the present. It is the oldest and the largest municipally funded worker cooperative business development program in the US. As a result of consistent and sustained city council funding, and it's not that much. It started at $1.2 million a year for 14 organizations, split amongst 14 organizations. Now we're at, in 2025, going to 2026, $3.67 million a year across those organizations. So, enough to keep these programs sustained, but it's not like crazy amounts of money when you look at the actual New York City budget. Um, what it consists of is 14 community-based organizations that work within and across New York City's 5 boroughs, and providing a whole slew of support for worker cooperative businesses. So this includes technical assistance, includes education, general and more specific education for entrepreneurs around worker ownership, and also incubation as well. So there's several of partner organizations operate as incubating organizations for worker cooperative businesses. There's also loan funds within this ecosystem that offers financing and lines of credit for worker cooperative businesses. And then also educational institutions that are able to provide like ongoing and technical assistance, whether it be legal, whether it be business related. CUNY is the partner in this, the State University of New York. It's administered and has been since the very beginning through the New York City Department of Small Business Services. So worker cooperative business programming is integrated into the services and the education that SBS offers. So for example, we're doing like an upcoming webinar on worker ownership through New York City Business Solutions Center. And then there's always like ongoing opportunities to engage with communities through small business services and just kind of leveraging that platform. A big focus for WCBDI has been from the very beginning, how do we center historically low wage workers, BIPOC and immigrant communities, as well as legacy business owners in order to build a economy in New York City that works for everybody. Like it's a very wealthy city, but not a lot of people get to benefit from it. And so our focus has been, how do we get the people who are the most marginalized in New York City to be able to access the services so that they can start assisting or create or convert a sustainable business. And then, as I spoke about a little bit earlier, a really important part of the work that we've done in New York City is around legacy business ownership and opportunities to convert businesses to worker ownership, and closely partnering with the city to do so through the owner to owners hotline. So to this day, as a result of municipal support, New York City does have the largest worker cooperative business ecosystem in the US. So about 200 plus worker cooperative businesses that were launched between 2015 and now. And about 110 of them are extant, which, that's kind of tracks with small businesses opening and closing, especially in the aftermath of COVID as well in New York City. And then the vast majority of these businesses that have been started, I don't have the numbers on me, but if you have questions, I can get those numbers to you. Have been businesses in that are BIPOC, immigrant led in a whole variety of industries, whether it's restaurants and bars that have converted to worker ownership, all the way to people who are working in construction, to people who are historically working as like home care workers, and in cleaning. There's a whole slew of businesses that have been developed that are worker owned in New York City. Next slide, please. Another initiative that we have that Dolly's focused on has been the California Worker Owner Collaborative. And in addition, both with New York City WCBDI, with Worker Cooperative Business Development Initiative, and CWOC, or the California Worker Owner Collaborative, we function as a backbone organization supporting administration and streamlining and convening the space. So, with the California Worker Owner Collaborative in 2021, also as a result of COVID, the California Seed program was launched, California Social Entrepreneurs for Economic Development Grant. And it really focused and centered on entrepreneurship with communities where English was not a first language and for monolingual non-English speakers. And so really centered immigrant communities specifically. We received us, DAWI, and five community-based organizations in the Los Angeles area, in the greater in San Diego, received a grant from California Seed to develop five worker co-op businesses. It was a $1 million grant that was split among six organizations. And this really seeded the creation of businesses in home care, child care, mobile car wash, taxi driving, and professional administrative services, with 54 members total. So this launched in 2021, and the majority of the worker owners themselves, BIPOC, people of color born outside the United States, identifying as women between the ages of 40 and 69, and have some college education. That's the demographics of the folks that we're working with. For the vast majority of the people that we were working with to develop these businesses, immigration status acted as a major barrier to employment, to traditional employment. And so developing worker cooperative businesses was a way for them to join the economy as entrepreneurs, as workers, as taxpayers, and really kind of lift up where their businesses. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Oh, thank you. So, what are the impacts today from the California Worker Owner Collaborative? We have seen an actual rise in wages. We did surveys before individuals joined the worker cooperative businesses, and then after. So our most recent one, which was last year in 2024, we've seen a rise in average hourly wages from people getting paid on average $12.25 an hour to now $22.92 across the cooperative businesses in this collaborative, which is pretty substantial. Job quality indicators have increased as well, including people having access to benefits. People get sick leave, which is a huge thing. People have paid sick time now, which they previously didn't have. Nearly double the hours of paid sick time required in California. Profit sharing is also been on the uptick as well, or exists now that we have worker ownership, with a total of almost $87,000 distributed across the cooperative businesses. And really the shining example of this, Courage, which is a home care cooperative. So, remember, it's low wage. It's historically an industry that is really, really tough and the margins are slim. But being able to distribute $66,620 to worker owners in the past few years. And then an increase in civic participation, which is very important. I mean, the worker cooperatives having a democratic management and governance model, I think is quite key to a greater civic participation, or it's at least correlates with it. Members report participating in more volunteer work, and that's significantly higher also than the American public as well. And then the vast majority, 89%, reporting being active in civic activities. Next slide, please. So I'm going to now move into a few spotlights that might be helpful just for your learnings, and happy to share more. So this cooperative, Afrolingual, launched in New York City. The one of the through support from New York City Worker Cooperative Business Development Initiative in 2023. It was incubated by African Communities Together with support from one of the WCBDI partners. Um, Take Root Justice, which does legal services, and African Communities Together received a sub grant from the initiative, so it did fund support services and incubation for that cooperative. They offer interpretation, language instruction, and translation in a variety of languages that otherwise would be hard to access in New York City in terms of language justice. So that includes Bambara Mandingo, Wola, Fulani, Iwe Mina, and More. Um, it's a major it's a major gap that Afrolingual is filling, and especially as we see municipalities having like regulations with regards to having language access and language justice. It also serves as opportunities to leverage the skills of bilingual newcomers and bilingual immigrants who can serve as navigators, who can build businesses that meet the needs of both cities and of the communities that they're working in as well. Next slide, please. Another spotlight is Green Mountain Graphics, which is a conversion. So the original business was founded in New York City, in Queens, in 1969 as a sign making company. The father passed it to his son in 1994, and then the son, after the pandemic, sold it to his employees. So Green Mountain Graphics does a lot of big jobs in New York City. If you're in New York City ever, you've probably seen their work on the side of in NBC Studios or in Rockefeller Center or in the MetLife building and at Grand Central. So they do a lot of work. When they converted to a worker co-op business, they created 8 employee ownership opportunities and also an opportunity for more jobs, more worker ownership as the company continues to sustain itself and to grow. The majority of the worker owners themselves are Latine. Many of them have been at the job and on the workforce for years. So this is an opportunity to not just sustain a legacy business, to keep it open, but also to build and create wealth and continue building these jobs. Next slide, please. And then the third spotlight, which is like my personal favorite, is Courage, which is a home health care worker cooperative based in Southern California. It is in the private home care industry, and it's in an industry that is notoriously tough for people. High turnover, low wages, can be very exploitative. It serves the LA area, and it was one of the recipients of the California Seed Grant for incubation through Filipino Worker Center. And it's done fantastic. It's actually besides in serving a growing market, the private pay market, as people are aging and caregivers are more in need than ever before. They've seen a growth of their headcount of the business, basically doubling. And then now it's gone to the point where they're in a space of replication and scale across California. They've now changed their name, or they're under the umbrella of a home care cooperative network called Vivid Life that is launching or has launched 3 cooperatives in California, and all of this since 2021. So this is like quite a bit of a success story that we've seen, and all done with the support of both community-based organizations, private philanthropy in the Southern California area, and then also state support through the California Seed Grant. Next slide, please. So one of the things, there's a lot that I shared, but in thinking about opportunities to build welcoming economies through worker ownership, and I welcome this dialogue when we get to the Q&A session as well. But some early thoughts are, how do we build welcome economies? We can do so through training community-based organizations and entrepreneurship centers that can be incubators and accelerators, not just of any startup business, but of worker-owned startup businesses that leverage the skills of the business owners and does so in a really sustainable way. Also, a gap that I see that a lot of CBOs that we partner with have really kind of closed is about creating culturally specific and competent worker co-op business education. And then pairing that with existing technical assistance providers out there with small business, many small business organizations out there, right? Like Start Small, Think Big is one that comes to mind. SBDCs. So like pairing this cultural understanding that CBOs have with experienced business technical assistance providers, and then also an understanding of how to do it within the context of a worker cooperative business. Those are the things that I think that like we can help bring together in order to develop a more welcoming economy. In addition, more training and education around succession planning and worker ownership as an option. Most people first don't think about succession planning. Business owners think about succession planning until it's a little too late. And then when they think about succession planning, they kind of think about it in a very linear way, which is sell to, another competitor in the market, pass it on to family, close the business. And worker ownership is something that we're doing a lot of work to both train technical assistance providers to do in converting business to worker ownership, and also educating the general public, educating business owners about this as a viable option for them. Access to capital remains a huge issue. Most capital providers don't even know what to do with worker cooperative businesses. And so that's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to lower the barrier. Some places will, demand credit checks of all of the worker owners in a business, which can be a bit complicated and also serves as a barrier for those businesses to get loans, even when it's a viable business and a viable existing business that's been converted to worker ownership. We also see with cities and municipalities, particularly opportunities for contracting procurements. So, for example, language services to meet regulatory requirements. That can be a big example of a procurement opportunity that also closes gaps for language access or closes and facilitates the aims of the city. And then finally, being creative and developing public-private partnerships that build that infrastructure of support. We would not have the ecosystem that we have in New York City, nor the ecosystem that's happening in California without government funding and philanthropic wraparound services and support to facilitate that. These businesses would still be struggling. But having that infusion of capital, having that infusion of support is what makes them competitive on the market, especially in a market that is dominated increasingly by private equity, by private players that have a lot of money and resources in order to bring their businesses to scale that worker cooperative businesses quite simply wouldn't otherwise be able to compete with. So it's really critical to have that public-private collaboration and partnership in order to support these small businesses get to sustainability and scale and to be effective players in the market, but doing so in a way that's high road and inclusive of all workers and all entrepreneurs. Next slide. So that's all, folks. Thank you so much for your time. We'll share out resources as well, and I will pass it on to Anthony for facilitating the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anh-Thu. This has been an amazing presentation and, really inspiring. We appreciate you sharing all the information and those spotlights is really great. So thank you. Just a quick reminder to everyone, if you have a question, go to that Q&A feature and enter it into that area. Or if you want to go to the chat, you're welcome to put it there as well. We'll keep an eye on that if that's easier for you. But while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'm going to address a couple that did come in earlier for you. So the first one is, how are workers recruited and trained or trained to be a part of a co-op?
Sure. Thank you. So there's many ways that it can be done, but I'm just going to give you concrete examples from Dawi's experience and with our partners. A lot of the incubated worker cooperative businesses, particularly, so I'm going to separate incubated from independent worker cooperatives, where it's just kind of like any other business, a group of people who know each other, friends or so forth, who come together and start a business. But in an incubated setting, and with our partners that are community-based organizations, worker centers, unions, they already have a membership base that they're organizing with, that they're doing advocacy with, and they might have experience, particularly in an industry. So, for example, Filipino Worker Center worked specifically in organizing home care workers, clean car wash campaign with mobile car washeros in LA. So recruitment is essentially done in-house in that regard, where it's like within their membership, let's start a business, let's do training and support in order to get this off the ground. There's also, for community-based organizations that are more traditional, like settlement houses or social services, they would recruit from the community, oftentimes from their workforce development program. Like Center for Family Life in Brooklyn, New York, has a very robust like social services and workforce dev program. And initially, when they started their worker cooperative business program, it came from workforce dev and recruitment from that. In terms of training, so you think of this as just a traditional business training where you have a developer who's in-house oftentimes with the organization. So a community-based organization commits to cooperative development, has an in-house developer. That developer leads on a whole variety of trainings, whether it's group dynamics, how to manage a meeting, how to run a meeting in a business, finances, how to read the books, how to do basic bookkeeping so that you understand what's coming in and what's going out to stay solvent. Operations, marketing, all of the nuts and bolts of running a business. And these trainings are done consistently during the period of incubation, which with Dawi partners tends to be 12 to 18 months. And then continues on with like the developer and our partner organization providing assistance as the business gets on its sea legs and is able to get on the pathway to becoming a fully independent business. Does it take time? Absolutely. Historically and traditionally, an incubated worker cooperative business, especially ones that are incubated by community-based organizations working with like workers who might have never started a business before, they can take 2 or more years. We've tried to streamline that so that it would take half that time, but a business still takes time to develop and to grow, and for people to go from a worker to an owner mentality in terms of running their business. And by that, that means like understanding that they're not going to get paid for all the work that they do in running their business, and that they have to make hard decisions in running the business as well, in terms of understanding the books, doing the operations, management. So that does take time to develop, but what we see, especially with our community-based organization, our CBO partners that have especially worker centers that like specifically focus on a particular industry, like people know what they're doing and they're just getting their businesses off the ground, and they're like really on top of it in terms of like going from being a worker to being like, I own this business, I have responsibilities to it. Let's make this happen. So that's the experience that we've seen so far.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that information and answering that question. One other question that has come in I think really the question is really geared towards smaller populations. So as it reads here is the question, does DAWI provide direct technical assistance to individual legacy businesses that are interested in converting? As an example, small towns that would have 1 to 2 businesses that would be in that situation and could use the assistance to convert their business to worker owned, where there are immigrant populations that would be interested in that opportunity, or any other ideas for, again, those smaller populations, towns that are under 50,000 in population.
Sure. So my answer is yes, and we have a we convene the Workers to Owners Collaborative. So I think we'll share that resource. It's the website is becomingemployeeowned.org. That is where we train technical service providers across the country, from rural areas like Montana to places like Cincinnati, Raleigh, New York City, and so on doing like the direct technical assistance that's needed for businesses to convert to worker ownership. So we do convene that space. It's like a train the trainers in the community of practice space. We also do direct technical assistance to some businesses through our partner organization partner fund, Apis and Heritage. So we have a legacy business fund that it's called a legacy business fund that where we do training and support for employee-owned business conversions. It's direct and it's kind of like it's done as part of this partnership. So there's certain businesses that yes, we do technical assistance on. Off the top of my head, we've done technical assistance in places like El Paso, for example, for converting businesses. And that's so yes. And then we also do offer like consulting services as well, that like engage workplaces that are converting. So it's like things like management, democratic management, how to implement that in your workplace. Those are the kinds of it's a combination of like train the trainer and then like these kinds of like specific trainings around management that we do both with our partner organizations and then sometimes directly with the businesses themselves.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Um, I want to acknowledge Karina Pacheco, who is an associate with Antu and has been helping us in the background, entering the information and some of the links into the chat. And also ask her to do us a favor because we've had some individuals ask Antu for your contact info. I know it's on the screen here, but if we can also drop that into the chat. I think we have a couple of individuals who unfortunately are in their vehicles and listening. So I think it's a little difficult for them to get to that. But if we could drop that in the chat, that would be great for those individuals. And also, please be careful if you're driving. But we're glad you're here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll share out the resources and contact info as well afterwards. So you don't have to, go back into the webinar and try to find my email address, but it is atnguyen@institute.coop and we'll share it out later on as well.
perfect. Thank you for that. Let's see. It looks like those are all of the questions that have come in so far. I do know that we've got a little bit of time left here. So if anyone has other questions at the moment, please go ahead and enter them into that chat or the Q&A function. While we're waiting to see if any other questions come in, I do want to point out to everyone, if you didn't already do so, there is a continuation of this conversation coming up on October the 15th. So Antu is going to be presenting another webinar on this topic that you see on the screen. We're also going to be able to bring in some panelists that are really going to be able to speak to the work that they are doing within their communities. So I invite you to be a part of that presentation. If you've not already done so, you can register at the link that Karina just dropped into the chat. Thank you for doing that. We'll also include it as part of the follow-up in the email that'll be sent out to you. So again, if you haven't already registered for that one, you'll have the opportunity to do so as part of the follow-up as well. And let's see, something that just came into the Q&A, actually, statement here. Public banks can help elevate proliferation of worker co-ops as well. So I guess just a statement there. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to or respond.
Yeah, we have several partner organizations where public banks are part of their advocacy, both in New York State and in California. There are strong pushes for public banks as part of a broader solidarity economy type initiative, and being able to support worker cooperatives is a key part of that as well in financing. So that's something that is definitely on our radar.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, I think that takes us to the end. Gone through all the questions that we have at this point. If you think of a question later, again, feel free to send an email to us, or when you get the follow-up email, you can ask your question there. On the screen here, I have included some links to Welcoming America's various social channels. To my point about questions, if you do have one, you're welcome to send it to events@welcomingamerica.org. We can answer your questions there or as part of that follow-up as well. And then for any of you that might not be a member of our Welcoming Network, I do invite you to go to welcomingamerica.org. There is information there about our organization, of course, but also information about membership. How you can become members, the different levels of membership, the benefits of membership. You can also see some of the various initiatives and programs that we do offer. So again, if you're not a member and you're interested, definitely invite you to go to our website, welcomingamerica.org, and learn more. So thank you again, Anh-Thu. I appreciate all of your time and prep for this webinar and for being with us today. Again, Karina, thank you for your support on the background as well. I appreciate you being here with us. And hopefully we'll see you all again on October the 15th for part two, basically, of this wonderful presentation. I hope everyone has a great afternoon and a great rest of your week, and we will see you soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.